Okay, everybody, welcome to the March 2025 FileMaker Pro user group. I'm Taylor Sharp. I'm one of the 3 code chapter coordinators, and over here is one of the other ones. He's hiding in the back making the multimedia work, and Greg Price probably is online. Hey, Greg. The 3 of us help coordinate and run these meetings here. We meet at the Harmonic Data Studios, so thank you all the Harmonic people for letting us invade here. So we are going to be talking about button bars today, and I'll give you an example here that's actually probably a bad example, but it's just something to do about it. But just let you know, forever we had buttons in FileMaker, and there was a point where buttons were just a square thing that we finally got to round the corners on, and then we got to where we could put text over it. But what does a button do? Button makes basically some automated business process. So you click on it, it's tied to, in FileMaker, a script. That's how we do business automation in FileMaker. It runs some script. So we're used to doing that in web pages and all our user interfaces. You click on something, something happens. And so I was perfectly happy with buttons and button bars, and with buttons before button bars came along, and I didn't know what else I would want. I will say that some of us had played little games like, I want a button, but I want it to say on, and then if I click it, I want it to say off, and things like that. And so we got really good at stacking buttons, and so you'd see and then hide the ones we don't want to see, and silly things like that. And
putting buttons inside of a portal.
You put buttons inside of portals, and doing the sliders, and all kinds of little workarounds. I don't know if anybody from Seed Code is on here, but good God, they could do layers upon layers of buttons and things. It's just like, oh my God, Seed Code people. Actually, their calendar is all now HTML stuff, but back in the day, I've never seen somebody open the layout and it has 20,000 parts or excuse me, objects, and you're just like, no. So along came the button bar, and I don't know, what was button bar about? Version 16 or 17, somewhere in there? I didn't even look at it. So it's been around a while, and like a lot of new features that come out in FileMaker, I ignore it for a few versions until I'm convinced it's the right thing, because I know how to use a button. What is a button bar? Another thing too is button bars. When you create a button bar, you get 3 buttons in there, and I was almost always, well, I don't want 3. And believe it or not, because I was an idiot. It's like, obviously you can add or remove them, but I didn't do button bars for a long time, because I thought, I want more or less than 3. A lot of times I just want 1. Why do I, so. Silly reasons, being a late adopter to things, but button bars are really exciting, and so
oh my God,
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. Yeah, when a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and a round thing in your face, you get
button bars. We're going to play around with some button bars. Button bars, in case you don't know, are up here in the little tools thing, and here's what we call button bars. It's right next to buttons. Buttons at one time were just buttons.
So we slipped from
became
G into PG there, so sorry about that.
So buttons were improving, but really they became awesome when they became button bars. So if you want a button bar, you click on the button bar, and then you come down here and you draw a rectangle, and presto, we have a button bar. Okay, why is that any better than drawing a button? I want a button that does press me. Okay, so on top of that, I was not excited about the colors and stuff, and I don't know why. I was just not a button guy at first. I mean, a button bar guy. Okay, well, what's the real big advantage of button bars? Okay, the real advantage is we have this calculation engine in FileMaker, and we're so used to doing calculations on fields, conditionals, hides. If you're a FileMaker developer, you're comfortable with a calculation engine. Well, the neat thing about button bars is it brings to the button bar the calculation engine. So before, if I wanted to press me, if I wanted this to be like on and then I wanted to toggle it with off, I'd have to make a whole nother button and toggle them back and forth, do hides and things. Well, you know what? If we got the calculation engine, okay, I got 3 here. I'm going to double click here so that I can see my things. In fact, I'm going to delete 2 of these. And we just got one button right here. So this is what I'm doing most of the time, working with one button. And the nice thing about it is if you click in, here's the button bar setup. And here, this little area right here is where you can either type text or you can go right in here to the edit thing, and you can actually write a button, and you can say, if something is true, then show me on, otherwise show off. I don't have anything really to test there, but use semicolon, not colon. Silly me. So if we do a calculation, we go back to browse, and we look at it here. Now we can see that's a calculation. And among being a calculation, it means you can put fields and you can put all kinds of operating system things. You can put the timestamp in there, or in anything that the calculation engine can do, you can make on your buttons. And suddenly that opens up a lot of possibilities, including such things if I got buttons that I don't want to do anything, that it removes the text completely if I know that certain people in a company aren't supposed to be pushing it or whatever. So all kinds of things with the calculation engine you can do. But in addition, we've got buttons that, well, of course, you can do all the other things you could with a button too. We can change colors and we can make it all kinds of ugly, whatever. And yeah, I can't read that, but you can do all kinds of things. But you also have over here in your toolbar under the, I don't know, what do you call this palette thing? The design palette or something like that. That was what was the other Heather from Adobe made all that stuff for us.
Yes.
I miss her. She was good from back in the day. So you can really control everything. And what's really nice is you can control an awful lot of things about a button. And it used to be it was just the background, but now we can do such things as changing, well, you could do the icon before, but you can control the dividers and the actual bar itself. But among other things, like in the segment, you can also control all the things like if I hover, I want it to go to yellow or something. So I've changed the hover over there, and if you go in here and you hover, you have to have assigned it a script or something, so otherwise it won't do it. So here, let me go. Open up again and say you have to do something. So in this case, I'm going to say perform some script that will do nothing. And now that it will do nothing, now if I hover over it, it should, hey, presto, we have hovers. Hovers are really useful in the user interface world just to help people understand when they're focusing on things. Works great on everything except for like iPads and iPhones, but very functional for desktop type things. So I like to.
Heather Winkle works for Delta Airlines now.
Oh, okay, that's the name, Winkle, Heather Winkle. FileMaker stole her from Adobe. She brought in all the themes and the cool things stuff, and just as we were getting going, she got stolen away. So apparently she's over at Delta. Thank you, Dennis.
She did a presentation for the Dig FM group about a month ago.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she's all about user interface and standards and branding, and she's actually really good. So think what FileMaker was like before we had styles and themes and stuff. There was a lot of things that we take for granted now that we hopefully will become
Pre-Winkle versions?
the pre-Winkle versions. Yeah. So.
She said you were the reason that she left Claris.
Oh no! She brought a lot of good things to it. So hopefully Claris will keep moving ahead on there. Some of the other things that have languished a little bit, like the charting and other things that are 2010 versions. But okay, moving forward on buttons. So in the button bars, you can also change the dividers, how thick they are and what color they are, which is usually you can change the segments. So if you have multiple segments, so we only have one segment here, so we can add a whole bunch of segments if we want. What kind of nice thing is you can also turn it sideways. That sometimes is useful too. So button bars are really useful for those kind of things. And also just to make sure you also understand, you can do a different calculation for each segment, and within each segment it can all be completely separate what you're doing, including the action that it does. So once you assign it, you can do a single step or a perform script that's different on every different button. So you don't have to make like individual buttons and it's all running the same thing. You can customize each segment to behave as you want it to, and that can be very useful. The little black between here is what they call the segment, and then you have the outside is the outside line. So the segments are different, and so you have control of segments over here versus the dividers, and then the bar also itself. So I really use button bars a whole lot. Most of the time I'm just using it just as, it really is what I consider a button killer. I don't make buttons anymore. Even if I want to do a popover, I'm going to use a button bar, because guess what? You have popovers in the button bar. So you don't even have to give up your popovers by using a button bar. So really, as far as I'm concerned, the only reason that we have the buttons of the past is for basically backwards compatibility. There really, in my opinion, isn't a reason to not use button bars every time you were thinking about using a button. I don't know. Heather, can you think of a reason to use a button instead of a button bar? No. It really is the way to move forward on things, is using button bars. How many out there are using button bars? So, okay. Well, certainly make use of it. Now, obviously, the ultimate in control is going to a web viewer and things like that, but this gives a lot of functionality right within the FileMaker layout tool set that really is neat. And so I'm going to show you an example of something that is actually probably a bad example, because you really wouldn't do that now, but I was trying to think of something that would need use of a button bars, and I realized everybody, now we're talking about calendars here, everybody nowadays really, if they're wanting a calendar, you're going to go with a web viewer and some calendar that you can drag and drop. But FYI, calendars are nothing but a bunch of buttons strung together. So that's what I'm showing off today as an example, even though if you wanted something quick and easy, yeah, you could do it. Now, first of all, I've made some calendar events. So it's just a little table with some made up events. And then I created a calendar. And these are really all just button bars now. Granted, you probably wouldn't do this for a calendar now, but as you can see, this is all done with native. There's no web viewer. This is all nothing but button bars. I could choose what I want, dance around in it. It's all nothing but button bars. And so I'm going to show you how this works. And of course, one of the things that's, about a calendar is you're trying to figure out, how do I know what day is the first day of the month? And of course, we know that by looking at day of week. Whatever the first of the month is, what is the day of the week? Well, if the day of the week is the fourth day, then we know that's a Wednesday. So we want to put the 1 on a Wednesday. And then we want to put the 2 on a Thursday and the 3 on a Friday. So these are all simple calculations based on whatever day of the week the first of the month falls on. We can do a calculation that shows that, and so that numbers all our months. And then of course I got a little fancy to add in, like they do on calendars, what the last few days of the previous month is on. But these are all calendar calculations that we have using day of week, and then what is the date plus or minus 1, and going through that. So we're going to take a look at that. But up top here, that's just a calendar drop down, and then a button that goes back and forth that just selects the date. I've got a global field that says whatever the month is, and it just is showing the month and the day of whatever date I chose. I could have picked any date in it, but it's only going to show the month and the date because it's just showing the month. But we're going to dig down in here and take a little look at things. I was trying to figure out what those colors were behind here. Let me go hide that. That was distracting. I was like, what added to my layout? I didn't know I had purple in it. So, okay. So if we're doing a calendar, there are a couple of constraints we have. The most any month should have would be 5 weeks. And then, of course, I did that, and Gerard reminded me, no, there's a weird where you have it on the very last day of the week, whatever, you have to show 6 weeks. So then, thanks to Gerard, I had to add a sixth row in here. But the standard way to show calendars is you have 6 rows by 7 days. And so we're following the common U.S. standard. I know if someone talks in other parts of the world, that is not the standard. When I always used to wonder why FileMaker doesn't do things like have an age calculation, because how old are you and where it's all one age. And then I dated a Chinese girl, and she informed me we don't do age right. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Age is the same. You have your first birthday, you're 1. You have your second birthday, you're 2. Well, that ain't how they do it over in Asia. You are 1 for your first year because you're in your first year, so you're considered 1. And as soon as you hit your first birthday, you're now 2. Because you're 2. So when she came to America, they asked her age, and U.S. Customs informed her that she was really a year younger. And she said, I like Americans. They're youthing me. But so calendaring, and in fact, if you deal with people in Muslim calendars, the weekend for Muslims is Friday and Saturday, not Saturday and Sunday. So I'm used to the American, usually European standard of things. So just realize when you do calendar stuff, there's all kinds of things that are not necessarily the American way. So apologies to the rest of the world. But okay, so we have a calendar here, and we're going to look at some of these calculations here. And so as you can see, I got a bunch of button bars. These are just button bars that you just laid on top of each other. And then I had a single button for each of the days. So you just see those sitting around. And I won't save that, but we'll come back here. And I'll take a look let's first look at the day calculation. So we have a whole bunch of these days, and I basically copied the same calculation over and just repeated it 6 times 7. I guess that would be 42, whatever, many times. So we just have a formula right in here. And this formula, all it does is, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Hopefully that zoomed in for people. So basically, we've got a grid, so row and column. Row is which of the weeks it is. Column is the day. So in this case, column 4. So Sunday is 1, Monday is 2, Monday is 2, Tuesday is 3, and Wednesday is 4. So that's why we're on the 4th column. Let me turn off my phone. Sorry about that. We'll go to silent. Okay, and so we just have whatever the calendar date is. Remember, we selected the date up top in there, and we convert that day to I may have selected some other date other than the first, so I just convert date to be whatever the first day of the month is. So we're always working on that. And this is where I just do a little bit of a calculation to figure out what row I am and then where the first day was. Now, I have a little, let's see, so we have the columns and then what day it is, time plus minus whatever the row is to figure out what the day is. It's just a little calculation, but it's the same for all the rows, and the only thing you're doing is you just change the row and the column based on where you are on the grid, the calendar grid, and it gives you the day for that particular one. So I futzed around with that for a little while and got the formula working, but it's just a FileMaker calculation formula. Once you have the formula, it works. When we go back here and we look, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it works all the way up into the next month. So that was for the numbers, and now sometimes we have events. So I've made a couple of random events here. You'll notice I made this button bar runs a script that says open up a card window. It could be any script you want to do. And you can edit your events or do whatever, but just a little like we're used to doing for other things. And so, of course, then I wanted to also display some things about it. Now, granted, if you had some HTML web viewer, you can dynamically size things. I guess you probably could in a FileMaker calculation too, because we can control font size and stuff. But I was just being real simple, just to add a calculation in here to show that, and this calculation, literally, here's the calculation. So I created a custom function here, and I'll go show you the custom function, but it takes whatever the date is, it goes and looks in the events table of whatever the date is and the start time and whatever the title was. And so it's a little custom function that then it makes a SQL call, goes over, pulls the event, and then displays it the way we see it right here, which is, so I know a long time ago I didn't like custom functions. Now I use custom functions a lot. So Dennis will make fun of me because I used to say, why would anybody ever use a custom function? You just write a script that does it. But yeah. So now I have a bunch of custom functions, and one of them though is, where is the one?
zoom in on that, Taylor?
Yeah, see if I could see. Calendar day. This is our little formula that goes out. It makes a SQL. You'll notice it's a resilient SQL because it uses the get field. No, actually it doesn't. Oh, shame on me. But yeah, it gets the table name and well, yeah, it is because it's quoting everything. But it's just a SQL call to go get the events of the day and list them, and then it sorts them. And then I went down, and for formatting purposes, I put a bar between the date time, or the time and the description. And so obviously you can do any calculation you want for how you want to display the data, but it's all just a FileMaker calculation, and that's just a custom function that I call on each of the days to say, show me, basically make a SQL call that goes over to that table, the events table, and puts whatever's in there. And it all interacts, and yeah, it seems to work pretty well. There's one button bar up here at the top, which obviously was a very simple one. I probably didn't even make a calculation. I probably just typed in, I just typed in the days. So if you want to get fancy, you can make this a calculation and depend on what culture you're in, what's the first day of the week, whether it's Sunday or Monday, depending on different ones, you could even get fancy with that. But now, the reality is most people are using button bars for navigation and things on in the run reports, and there it's like on the left or the top of their whatever layout that they're in, and you're probably not creating calendars, and most calendars now you wouldn't do this way, but it was a good example to show something that has a whole bunch of buttons on it and a way to do it all just within FileMaker. But at this point, I gotta see any questions about button bars and what I've been showing. Mark's got it.
Might have to pass around the table.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This isn't a question so much as just a comment, if that's okay. Am I allowed?
Certainly.
So one of the great things about using button bars and using them for everything, for labels, column headers, buttons, UI elements even, is that they provide consistency. So just like the squares on your calendar are evenly spaced, you can create the same consistency across your interface using button bars. For example, column headers, things that, particularly with the vertical positioning of a button bar, to create, instead of your text objects on your layout as your field labels for things that are stacked vertically, you can evenly space them, know they're always exactly the same, always evenly perfect, and have exactly the same formatting, et cetera, all the time using the button bars. It just gives you a much cleaner look. The other comment I wanted to make, and you touched on that with your days of the week, is that with something like a calendar, using button bars, because what they display is based on a calculation, even if that calculation is just a word in quotes, you can provide an end user with formatting options, like what's the start date of the week? So our work week is Monday to Sunday, for example. So maybe I want to see a calendar that's Monday to Sunday. And because everything is a calculation, in combination with some helpful custom functions, perhaps, that are looking at your settings, you could just toggle between a Sunday to Saturday week and a Monday to Saturday week, or Monday to Sunday week. Very easy. Last comment, and then I'm done. When I saw your day numbers, the calendar days, my first thought was, oh, cool, he's using button bars all over the place, except you only have single button bars there, and you have them individually. Because of the background color that you've used on the numbers, that is probably the right way to go. But I would think of the design thinking, how can I do this with a button bar for each row? And so I would design it to use numbers that don't have a background color. And you could actually just have a different sized button bar across the top of each square. Still 7 buttons in the bar, just aligned or
Right line.
with an indent, with a
Right.
left margin, so they're centered within the space you want them. You can still apply the formatting, et cetera, so they can be calculated. You're already
And reduce the
calculating
number
them,
of objects,
but
yeah.
reduce the number of objects on your layout.
Yeah, certainly.
And so there are just a lot of options with button bars that aren't just the functionality that they give you when you click them, but the UI that you can provide with them.
Certainly, that's very true. As one of the things Heather was saying, when you have a button bar, because everything's together, it means it all immediately lines up, separated the same. You don't have, Dennis used to, talking with Dennis, you'd open up a layout, everything's off a pixel here, a pixel there, whatever, and it's amazing how just things being off one pixel just, there are all kinds of things with it. Dennis calls it pixel fudging, we'll keep it PG, to clean up other people's mess and user interfaces when things don't line up exactly, or particularly people who don't know how to use the alignment tools, and we've all seen those. And so if you use button bars, it just makes it all easy. It just all stays together and it doesn't get off that way. So I certainly like when it looks good. But this was a little thing that I played around with. It's on one of my templates out there. If you're ever bored, my company webpage is tms.us, and if you click on the templates, I have a bunch of templates like this and custom functions and stuff like that, a bunch of API things that are just free for download. I'll show that to you over here. Let's see. Hey, Engage. So there's my webpage. You click on the templates, and presto, you're just you should recognize immediately, this is just instant web, well, I said instant web publishing. WebDirect, boy, I'm going old school. WebDirect here. And it just has a bunch of templates that I've made and give out for free. So now, along the calculations, I'll close this here. One thing I will mention is that when you are doing calculations, a lot of times if you're trying to make things look exactly or be formatted the same way, when you get a calculation here, these calculations literally are text things. So if I wanted to say 1 times 0.9 and put a dollar in front of it or something like that, and if I were to look at this, you'd say $0.9, but we're used to seeing formatted dollars, at least the US dollar comment with a zero in front of it and the following zero and stuff. So I use other custom functions to format stuff, like, for example, I had whatever that formula is, and there are a whole bunch of these different custom functions out there, but here's custom function that, now we have it formatted the way you want. And it throws in the commas if you got large numbers too, and makes it the way you want. So you have to do, if you're doing a calculation, it's just a calculation, and so you have to do formatting likewise. I like my dates to be month/day/year, so a lot of times I'm taking dates and reformatting, and so they might be 3.9.25, and I want to make it, instead of FileMaker format, I want it to go back to FileMaker format and use slashes. That's just my little custom function to make it month/day/year, and that way it's got the leading zeros and stuff like that. But if you are going to do buttons, remember, if you want formatting of numbers or things like that, you're going to have to do the formatting yourself. The little formatting button that we're used down there for like a date or a number field won't do these formattings in here, so you have to do those. So,
Hey, Taylor, you got to cough away from the mic.
sorry, everybody.
We've got all sorts of audio issues now. It's all your fault.
My bad.
Just for the people who are watching afar, yeah, we're mocking Taylor right now.
I need to get out my little cough drop thingies, but as you can see, you can use custom functions to help make things whatever you want, whatever formatting you want. Just realize, if you're going to do a button bar calculation, you're doing all the formatting. The formatting's not down in the like number and date type thing, when the one that's over down here, whatever you call this, data formatting.
I apologize, Taylor. I know I said I was done, but you just reminded me of something. One of the very few issues that I have experienced with button bars has to do with the formatting of states. So we've got the active, inactive, hover, in focus, et cetera, right? I hate the active state.
Oh, yes.
Right? But I finally found out after all these years how to deactivate it. Right? So you're showing right now the active segment, which would be which button by default would be active. But I always thought that if you say none, which is the default, that then the active state shouldn't be there. The problem is we have a lot of buttons where, okay, that's the last one you selected, but now they're doing something else. We don't care what the last selected button was, right? So we don't want to see that. So instead, go into the specify and put 0. That's it. And your active state will not work. And you don't have to worry about it. Historically, what I've always done is I have defined in the style that the active state is identical to the inactive state. So I select my inactive state, I hit the little copy this eyedropper, then I select active and I paste eyedropper to put this.
That was Heather Winkle too.
Yes, and I like it. The problem is that then you lose the hover state.
Which is convenient, which is really nice. A user interface.
The
Yeah.
hover state is real nice, but the machinations you have to go through in your scripting to basically disable the active is not worth it.
I've never really found what does that other than going to layout mode and back or something. But
I have tripped over it a couple of times, but not enough to be able to tell you that.
I go in every time and put false in.
But it was Alex, who's not in the room right now, but it was Alex who found the 0 option. He did the research. It's out there if you take the time to look for it. I never did. I just remained annoyed by it for many years. But that's a really cool tip that I myself just learned like within the last month.
So active segment, you're specifying with a calculation.
Yes.
0 or
Yes.
okay.
So you can have multiple segments, and I can choose which one I want to be the default segment, and it will format differently. It'll format whatever the active is. But a lot of times you don't want that, and so you just come in here and do it by calculation and just give it a false or a 0. It's Boolean, and it'll.
It would have been nice if I'd known that one before I designed my own theme for 22 files.
Oops.
Same way with using headers through the button bar would have made it, because I switched all my table layouts to list layouts. I'm still debating whether to go back on some of those, but.
Okay, one more thing, because I really love button bars.
Yeah.
So one thing that you cannot do with a button bar, all the wonderful things we can do, and of course what you didn't touch on were the conditional formatting and hide conditions are unique for each button within
Yes.
for each button segment within the bar. So that gives us just all kinds of possibilities, including we made the text go away, not with our calculation, but here's a cool trick. If you want the text to be hidden, you cannot select a transparent color in your conditional formatting. You can't select, you can try selecting a percentage, but it won't work if what you're formatting is the text. What you can do is change the text size to something like 132. Which means all you'll actually see is the white space, the transparent space in the bottom corner of whatever the text actually is. So that's a trick for hiding text without hiding the button itself. But what you can't do is calculate the icon.
That would be nice.
That would be wonderful. So alternately, the workaround for that is to create 2 buttons that have the 2 icons that you want. Say you're toggling between on and off and you've got this really nice empty circle and a really nice filled green circle. and you want to toggle, or you've got something that looks like a toggle, right? So you've got the on-off versions of your icon. So in the space, in the physical space that you would have your button size, you put 2 buttons in your button bar. So they're each segment is half the width that it would be. And one of them is your off version of the icon. The other one is your on version of the icon. And you use your hide condition to decide which one is going to show.
Right.
And so sometimes I'll have button bars that maybe have 8, 12 buttons that are visible. But if you dive into it, you might find up to 36
Ouch.
buttons, because sometimes buttons get hidden, but you want the buttons to all be in the right position regardless of whether buttons before them or after them are hidden. And one thing that the button bar, right, so the button bar itself will remain the size that you have it in the layout. It's full size. And however many buttons there are that are visible will expand or condense to fit that size. So I have one layout, for example, where you can look at it in detail view, and the buttons, it doesn't matter where they are, but if you're looking at it in list view, those buttons better be aligned. And the fact that the status of one record says the right 4 buttons shouldn't be showing doesn't mean that I want the left 4 buttons to be twice as wide as they should be. So I will insert a blank button that has the opposite hide condition, basically, of the visible button. So you can see everything stays spaced properly. So you can do, there's a lot of tricks and things once you get really comfortable with button bars that you can do to reproduce whatever interface you're looking for.
To be, how far do you go with workarounds before you just do a web viewer and then you can,
Right.
but there's a balance. At some point, your workarounds get so much, you might as well just do a web viewer. And but
If that were your thing.
which it generally is not. I generally avoided web viewers. But sometimes you just got to.
So, sure, but all I'm saying is there are a lot of options when you start combining hide conditions and conditional formatting and understanding how the button bar works. You can do a lot.
So I have some layouts where I got this, let's say 9 buttons, but they are like 3, 3, and 3. Before I did my theme change, they were actually 3 button bars paired up because I wanted them to be different colors. Can you change the color? Well, condition. So like if I say this, I'm sorry. If I say that the text for the button is send, it's going to have a different color than if it says something else. Oh, I got more work to do.
Yeah. Proving the user interfaces.
Do we have any comments or questions on Teams, Paul, that you've seen or not yet? I assume not. Oh, John.
I'm sure Dennis has a comment.
I don't know if Paul heard you.
No comments or questions?
Yes.
I think next time that happens, I'll say, have you tried with the button bar?
My only complaint with button bars is the difficulty sometimes of being able to slide the button left or right. I don't know what the magic keystroke is to get a grip on it to make it move. Sometimes what I find happening is when I click on it in order to move, let's say I want button 4 to become button 2. Sometimes you can grab it and move it, and other times it resists it. And if you lock the
you're
button
talking about
bar-
just physically moving it throughout the button bar, Dennis?
Yeah, moving it from being segment.
It's
4
very
to
simple.
Segment 3.
You click on it, you click on the segment once, and then you click on it again and hold, and then it'll move.
I want to say I've tried that, and sometimes it fails, but
I have to agree with Dennis. Okay, because Dennis, I experienced the same thing also. And I can say that what I have done is I make sure I'm out of the button bar. Okay, because when I
can tell you that the behavior I'm expecting is the same behavior that you have in table view when you want to move a column left or right. You can click on it and hold and slide it, and it moves just fine. But the buttons seem to resist that. And if you lock the button bar, then I think you can't make changes to it.
Right. Okay, because what I've done is I click outside the button bar, and then I just put the pointer right at the bottom of the segment that I want to do and holding down on it, and then move it over. That's been where I found a little bit of that technique. And I'd like to appreciate it if you could click a button and, like Dennis said, then click it again and then slide it, or do a double click and slide it, because getting it in the sweet spot is a real challenge.
So you're saying the border is the sweet spot?
That's what I've found out. What I've done is I've always gone on the bottom and just get my tip in there, the tip of the arrow, hold down and then hold it, and then it will shake a little bit or make it looks like it's got the square around it, and then I can move it over.
Right.
That's what I have found. Something
I'll
close
try
to
that. Thank you.
something close to that, but it's frustrating when you think that, oh, I'll click on that and I'll click it again and hold down and I'll be able to move it. And that's the way I expected it to do. And I says, well, I got to figure this out, because I can't be the only one that doesn't know how to do this.
No, you're not the only one. I've tried yelling at it. That doesn't work either.
Well, guys, if you're on a Mac, just when you click on it once, click the second time and do the second depressed click on your mouse pad, your trackpad, what have you, and that'll get it for you. It requires that secondary click that, I don't know what they call that on the Mac, where you have you click once and then you push a little harder and it clicks again. That's what it takes to get to move that thing.
Well, anyhow, we each have our challenges there.
Right.
Well, it's FileMaker, so challenges are kind of part of the landscape, aren't they?
You'd think that Taylor would have demonstrated this.
Missed opportunity, Dennis.
You see, it's working for me, Dennis.
Okay.
Got to show your screen there.
Hold on. We're working on it.
Sorry. Like this, Dennis.
I'm jealous.
Let go. Show us when you click. Let go, Taylor. Okay, let go. Click outside the button bar. Now click in the center. So you got to be right on that little edge there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not like changing the size of a popover. Also, you got to be right on that edge before you can change the size of the.
Try it in the center, Taylor. Because I'm literally on my machine doing exactly from the center without having to click on the edge.
Actually, with the popover, there's an easy way to do it. You don't have to grab it by the edge. All you have to do with the popover is click on the title of the popover that's inside the popover rectangle.
And I got a question over there on the objects, Taylor. Can you change the button location by moving that button up and down on the left-hand side there in the objects panel?
Objects?
No, over on the left-hand side of the layout screen. So let's see. If you move that, are you moving the buttons?
That's clever.
So that might be an easier workaround when moving those buttons around.
Absolutely.
And I've really loved the objects until recently. We have a bug in objects that if you doing things in there that freezes up FileMaker when you open up.
Right.
And hopefully they're going to fix it soon, but I've had to do more force quits because of working with the objects.
The workaround for that, Taylor, if you find that there's a calculation dialog open, or maybe the data viewer or something, and it constantly beeps at you, all you have to do is select something else in the object palette. That liberates
I'm
you
usually
from
trying
that
to hit escape
beeping.
and okay and things. Okay, well, I'll go try that. Hopefully
I've got a
fix
solution
that.
for your Taylor. I've got a solution for your having to force quit.
Shoot.
Work on your Windows machine.
The solution that, can you hear me? The solution that works for me in that case is see across the top of your screen where you have the tools. Just change to like the text tool and then back to the pointer tool, and that generally frees up that problem where you're stuck in the object palette. That tends to work for me.
Okay.
But the behavior, what you're describing there with the behavior of the tools is driven by one of the preferences where it locks. Go to your preferences, Taylor. Not there. FileMaker Pro preferences. There you go. Sorry, layout. Always lock layout tools. I don't know if you like to turn that on. I do. And I always turn off the middle one because God forbid somebody else would, that should be turned off by default, but it's not. But I always lock my layout tools, and that's why you have to go to the status area to change to a different tool. So somehow I think whoever said that is right, that you can change from the text to the pointer, but this thing influences it.
Interesting. Okay. Learning new things. What do you know? But thank you for everybody being here, and have a safe month, and we'll see you next month.